Welcome back in to another Sonic Truth Dynasty Fantasy Focused podcast brought to you by Player Profiler. I'm Alan Seslowsky of RotoWire.com, the moderator of the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast. Of course, I'm always along with Theo Gremminger. Theo is the head of podcasting now, Theo? What's your upgraded title?
I am the senior fantasy analyst and the head of podcasting.
That's a good title. Yeah. I like the multi-title. And in for the podfather who's on vacation this week is Cody Carpentier. Major upgrade for the show today, Theo. Cody, you're all over the channel, but it is good to have you on the Sonic Truth. What's your title nowadays?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Titles are flying around everywhere.
Head of football.
Head of football. There you go.
Yeah, I believe Cody is the head of football. Cody basically does it all. And Cody's putting out fire. And I will say this is Cody's second appearance because he was on our mock draft spectacular, and he crushed it on that one. And it's great having him back here. And this is an awesome weekend. Cody and I are just talking about the rookie drafts that we're in. I'm in so many rookie drafts right now, my head's going to explode. Yeah,
mine too. They come like a fire hose, right? Like I have it's like they keep starting, and then I don't even know. I just see the picks come up on my sleeper app notifications. So, and we know all of you are in your rookie drafts right now, and that's what we're going to do today, Theo and Cody. We're going to help out people figure out, because everyone knows what to do with the top 5 picks, and we'll get into the nuances of what Theo's done, what Cody's done, but it's that pick 7 through 11, 7 through 12, where people are trying to trade back. They want next year's picks. But before we get into that, guys, there's a lot of people that are doing startups, and we're getting a lot of questions with how to construct your startup roster in these dynasty leagues. So I'm going to start with you, Theo. There's a group of 24-year-old running backs, Cam Akers, who's going to be 24 when the season starts. You got J.K. Dobbins and Rachaad White. The most common question I see on the Player Profiler startup message boards are, how do we rank these guys and why? So let's start with you, Theo. Put them in order and give me a good reason why one should be ahead of the other, and then I'm going to come over to Cody.
It's a great question, and Billy Muzio and I actually had the exact same group that we looked at in a redraft perspective this past week. And I think it's interesting, Alan, if you look at it, because if you want to let redraft kind of influence your dynasty decision, J.K. Dobbins is easily the pick for this year. J.K. Dobbins has the highest ceiling of these three for 2023. So if I'm going for it and I'm a contender, I am absolutely leaning into the Dobbins side, because Dobbins has potential for double-digit touchdowns in that offense. I think that we love the receiving upgrade that Baltimore has. We love the offensive coordinator upgrade in Todd Monken. We love the fact that Lamar got the bag. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, the Ravens are going to run the ball. And Dobbins is they added no competition to him. So it's Dobbins and then, a bunch of guys that Dobbins should beat out. So if Dobbins is healthy, Dobbins will have the highest ceiling this season. I love Rachaad White. I would put him at number 2 because I think the receiving profile is excellent. And I would have Cam Akers as my third option if I was choosing one of them. So if it's 2023 focused, it's absolutely Dobbins for me. And then if you want to stretch it to a little bit longer window, then it becomes Dobbins versus White for me. I know Akers has shown us something, but he hasn't shown us something consistently for a long period of time, and that matters. And that same argument can be put on Dobbins, but at least Dobbins has that awesome potential offense.
Cody, Cam Akers finished the year on fire. Dobbins basically had a lost year. So what's the case for pushing Cam Akers above the other two? Theo already talked about him basically being the third of a great bunch of running backs. So why Cam Akers?
Well, I'd be on Team J.K. Dobbins number 1 out of these 3 guys here. And formerly I'd be on the Rachaad White train. I just am not confident in this team returning the same output that they did in 2022 or 2021, obviously with Tom Brady there. I think Mayfield's going to be enough, but it's still going to be a bad football team. And they've shown that they want to bring other pieces in, like even a Sean Tucker, who maybe some people are or aren't valuing, but it still matters because there's still people in that backfield, and they'll probably bring in a free agent. Akers, though, on the other hand, I would probably have in that 2 area. I think as far as value goes, I think Akers is the best value out of this group right now. You look on the ADP tracker, J.K. Dobbins and Rachaad White are going 58th and 61st in traditional leagues, whereas you look all the way down to Cam Akers going 80th off the board right now with an ADP of 88.4, which his range is like 607 to the 1004. So it really depends on the draft you're getting yourself into. I like Akers. I think that the Rams are doing the right thing as far as building this offensive line back out. The team I don't think is going to be very good, but I think as far as expected for him, yes, they have Zach Evans there, but I think Cam Akers, this is his offense. He would have been gone if they wanted him gone. They kept him there for a reason. I think it's not close right now for me between these three. I think J.K. Dobbins is clearly the top dog when you're looking at the next 3 years and you're looking at 2023 by itself. So I would say Dobbins, Akers, and then Rachaad White, which is weird because I love Rachaad White.
Yeah. By the way, I should have warned you guys. One of the pieces of feedback that we got on the Sonic Truth is don't mention the R word. Not Rachaad White. It's redraft. People say, I tune in all week for Player Profiler, for redraft stuff. This is my Dynasty time, so don't mention it again, Theo.
I will ban the word redraft from the vernacular. I'll keep it only for Thursdays with Billy.
You just got to use the word 2023, and then people will maybe not.
Well, this is what I told the commenters, that I said that sometimes that, we get in this dynasty mindset, guys, is that we're thinking about the next 5 or 10 years. You're really talking about the season in front of you and maybe the season after that.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly how I play. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's the most optimal way to play Dynasty. I know Theo plays in probably a little more Dynasty leagues than I do, but it's like when I'm focusing on winning in Dynasty or even winning in seasonal, I use both against each other. For seasonal, you can use some Dynasty strategy. For Dynasty, you can use some seasonal strategy, and I think they work together in that. Just looking at talent in different perspectives.
Well, we use a 3-year window at Player Profiler when looking at Dynasty and considering rankings and all those sort of things. But I think when it comes to, your wide receivers, your quarterbacks, certainly, and your tight ends, you can have a nice long-term view. But when it comes to your running backs, you really should focus in the near term, because the running back landscape changes every single year in the NFL. It can change month to month in the NFL. We saw when we talked about, the decision that Seattle had adding, Zach Charbonnet. It's a terrific example. A guy that we think is very safe at the running back position. All of a sudden, competition comes in there, and high draft capital players, a cheap free agent can land somewhere. So I think with running backs, we're not supposed to use the redraft word, but I think redraft rankings should be a somewhat of a guide for running back rankings, because what you see is what you get, and you can't plan on it being the exact same way 2 years from now.
Now, you said it exactly right. I always say that the redraft rankings, guys, are the sobriety to the drunk dynasty rankings, right? Like last year, I used to use Mike Evans as the example, where he was like wide receiver 38, and then in redraft, he was like wide receiver 9. Obviously, he didn't pay off in that ADP, but let's pause here for a quick break from our friends at Underdog to get a message about the Best Ball Mania is open. And we come back, guys. We're going to tell people what to do in their rookie drafts with picks 7 through 12.
Let's take a moment to talk about Underdog Fantasy. Now, many of you have already signed up. Thousands have signed up from Player Profiler already over the years. Underdog has supported us since 2020. Much of what you see on Player Profiler is because of Underdog, because of their support. Get the Underdog app, plug in that promo code Underworld, and they're making the NBA fun. Their NBA pick'ems, it's changed my Wednesday night. It's changed my Sunday afternoon. I used to play Underdog just for the best ball drafts. I mean, the best ball drafts are amazing. These draft rooms fill so quickly, and you can win life-changing money. You want to take advantage of all the sleepers we talk about on this show? Well, what better place than in an Underdog draft room to do that? And I recommend taking your Underdog play to the next level by diving into their NFL pick'ems. It's important to correlate those NFL pick'ems. You can pick both the quarterbacks and the wide receivers to exceed expectations. Correlate them, and you can 5x your payout. Bada bing, bada boom. Underdog Fantasy, the promo code is Underworld. For an instant deposit match up to $100, Underdog is the truest friend of the Underworld.
See, even when Matt Kelly's not here, he's here in spirit. I'm Alan Seslowsky, is a reset from RotoWire.com, moderator of the Sonic Truth Fantasy Football Podcast. That's Dynasty focused, not redraft focused, right? Along with Cody Carpentier and, of course, Theo Gremminger. Theo, rookie drafts, like we talked about, they come at you like a fire hose. People are not in 2 leagues. They're not in 5 leagues. They're in 25 leagues. And picks 1 through 6 in Superflex leagues are mostly the 3 quarterbacks, Stroud, Young, and Anthony Richardson in some order. Of course, Bijan is at the top of that. And then we have JSN and Gibbs in some order. This is where the fun begins, where people are starting to trade back. So I'm going to go to each of you now. If you only had one league, Theo, and you're talking about a tight end premium, PPR, all the normal things that we love, all the bells and whistles, what's the correct order, if there is one, with this pick 7, 8, all the way to the end of the first round?
Okay, so I play mostly single QB, but I do have a couple of super flex leagues and for FFPC the triflex leagues. And for me, there's a very clear player that I want to get at the 7 overall, assuming that we see the big 3 quarterbacks, the big 2 running backs, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba as the top 6. I have focused in on Jordan Addison as the person that I want at the 107. I made a move, Alan, in a pretty high stakes FFPC triflex league where I traded Jimmy Garoppolo and the 112 to move up to the 7 to get Addison, because I think that that's going to be a pick that lasts for a long time. Then it's kind of a pick your poison here. I think that Dalton Kincaid, Quentin Johnston, and Zay Flowers, depending on your preference and your rankings, that should be the next 3. And I think that's fairly clear for the 7, 8, 9, 10. You have Kendre Miller, you have Devon, Achane, you have some very promising running backs, but I feel like with the draft capital put into these receivers, you can wait till like 11, 12, 201 and still get those sort of exposure to those running backs. So for me, it's Addison. And then in FFPC tight end premium, it would be Kincaid next. Zay and Quentin Johnston kind of pick your poison there. I have leaned Zay Flowers, but I have picked a couple of Quentin Johnstons in case I'm incorrect on that one. But I like Zay Flowers a lot.
All right, I want everyone in the chat to put who the next few picks should be in your order that you like right there. So after the big 6, Cody, I saw you talking about it this morning on social media. Rashee Rice, does he belong in there, or is he going to be going there eventually? So the 6 that he just talked about seem to be in some order of what's going on. Is there anyone else that he didn't include that you believe should be in that next 7 through 12?
No, I don't think so. I think he mentioned them all. If you're focusing in on tight end premium, I think that's the world where Kincaid does come in, and I think Mayer as well, being in Las Vegas. My focus in that whole tier right there would be Addison and then Flowers. And then I would what I've been trying to do is just move back and move out overall in round 1. If I'm not in the top 5 where I get exactly what I want, whether it's Bijan, Gibbs, Richardson, or even Addison, I'm drafting Addison all the way up into that range. I'm trying to get out. I got out from 3 to the 6 and the 6 into round 2 and garnered 2 firsts in a league the other day in Superflex. And if you can do it, you do it. Otherwise, I think you just fall into that Quentin Johnston, that Kincaid, that Mayer. Theo knows this. I've talked to him multiple times about this. It's tough for me to click that button on a tight end at the end of round 1, even if it is tight end premium. It's just not something that I generally like to do. Of course, Quentin has his situation where he's playing with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and there's expectation that he should fill the shoes. But in year 1, what's that look like? Flowers, of course, in Baltimore, what's that look like? Addison's really the one that I feel most confident about in this entire crew.
It's interesting, though. I'll say, Cody, we talk about trade equity as a thing that we need to be aware of in dynasty leagues. And I'll say from an FFPC perspective, I have one league, a Josh Allen team, a high-stakes one, where I pulled the trigger on Dalton Kincaid at the 105. I want the correlation there between the quarterback and tight end. I think if that hits, that really hits. And then I'm in Alan, you're in a startup, in the same startup as I am, where we're doing a startup draft with I'm splitting a team with Dan Williamson of the GOAT District. You're in there. Matt Kelly, the Podfather, is in there. Scott Barrett's in there. Danny Kelly, Jax Falcone. It's a sharp league. And you saw where Kincaid went, Alan. He went ahead of Pat Freiermuth in a startup. So he's already leapt Freiermuth, a guy who's done it for 2 straight years, and a guy that the dynasty community is locked in on Freiermuth. You could flip Freiermuth for 110 in pretty much any FFPC league right now. That's like he's a locked in value, and Kincaid has jumped him. I've seen a lot of sharp money going in on Kincaid in the FFPC streets, and I feel like that matters because he doesn't need to hit in a huge way this year, and he's still going to gain value.
Yeah.
So even if he misses any time at all, like you're banking on what you're saying is that these guys are going to keep their value
just froze up a little bit there. It's okay. What he's talking about is that I like that you're talking about Kincaid.
Cody. So I see Cody. Is he okay now? Yeah, he's good.
Could you not hear me?
No, Cody. Finish what you were saying.
I was just saying that you're saying is that you think that the
Can you hear
Kincaid
me?
hold.
Because he's out. There we go.
We can hear you.
I can hear you both.
Yeah. Cody for a second. He had the circle of death going. You know, the buffering circle. But you're back now, Cody. Go ahead. You were talking about Kincaid and why that it would almost be impossible for him to lose value.
No, I didn't say that. That's Theo. That's what I'm saying is Theo's inferring that I think is what I'm asking is that Freiermuth being what he is, I think he's a model of consistency at the tight end position. Does Kincaid bring that same thought to you? Because Kincaid leaped Freiermuth already, but there's a volatility in my mind with the Kincaid. There's 24, I brought this up, 24 years old. He's got the back injury. He's only got 1 year of real output. And yes, he looks unreal, but I feel like there's a lot of volatility in that where, yes, right now you maybe pay that 105. Yes, you could probably trade him potentially down the road for something, but are you really going to trade him down the road? Like what if he bombs out? Or, I mean, I think there's a world where he bombs out and then you can't sell him for anything. Or I guess there's that world where you're expecting him to jump into that Kittle area and be in the top 5, right? Is that kind of your expectation? Because I don't foresee you ever, of course it's Dynasty, you can trade anybody at any time, but I don't foresee you if a Kincaid hits ever moving him, right?
Yes, but it's still, you want to have that flexibility in that option because I feel like that's an important thing, having movable assets and having draft picks you can move. I think that's like definitely something like you don't want guys on your Dynasty roster that you can't pivot off of. But for me, Kincaid, the way that he's being treated right now, and I know, Alan, we're talking about when it comes to draft capital, NFL draft capital, they're not in the same ballpark. But right now, Kincaid is worth what TJ Hawkinson was as a rookie. That's the reality we live in, where TJ Hawkinson was going in a similar range in rookie drafts, and the Dynasty market is in fuego for him. And Kincaid also steps into the league at a time where you see a few of these, very valuable Dynasty tight ends are aging. They're getting older. George Kittle's getting older. Travis Kelce's already old. Darren Waller is older. So it's like it's a kind of a perfect entry point for him, where you have the quarterback pairing with Josh Allen, you have the aging tight end marketplace, and then you have Kincaid. And then we also see, Cody, this week, the news that came out that Zach Ertz says that he was supposed to go to Buffalo. That Buffalo tried to get Zach Ertz, and it got overruled. He ends up in Arizona. I think Buffalo has wanted a guy like this where, for better or for worse, Kincaid could obviously fail. Like, NFL players fail. Alan, you talk about this, where it's easier to just kind of bet against these guys. But Buffalo's going to give him every opportunity to fill the Kelce role. Not in the same, style. He's not going to. I'm not saying he's got 150 targets, but they've lost in the playoffs to Kansas City now, and they are been competing with Kansas City for that AFC title. They want a tight end who can do some of the same things stylistically and win in some of the same ways. He will not reach that level, but I do think it's possible that he could be a Zach Ertz type player in the league, which is bold, but I think that's the archetype. He's never going to be Kelce, but I think he can be an Ertz.
Interesting, guys, and I brought this up to you offline, that if Dalton Kincaid didn't have the letters TE next to his name and he had the letters WR next to his name when he was drafted, and there was a first-round wide receiver drafted by the Buffalo Bills, we'd be thinking about him completely different. It's not like Kincaid was drafted for his blocking acumen, Cody.
Yeah, but it's an entirely different prospect for me. Like if it was like a Zay Flowers, I think would be a different conversation, because the type of athlete that he is, if he was 22 years old, not closing in on 24, if he didn't have the back injury, like that's really why I'm pushing against it. Cause it's like the red flags are there. Take the red flags and wait, like make him prove to you that he's going to hit. Like wait, you say the price is there, right? The price of 105 is there. I'm not paying 105, but you're saying you can trade for Freiermuth with the 110. Okay, so if by week 3 this guy hits, how old is Freiermuth? Freiermuth is 24.5, Kincaid's 23.5. Okay, so give me 3 weeks, 4 weeks. If he hits in the first 4 weeks as a rookie, okay, I'm there. I'll pay the extra premium to prove that he's there. I'll give you a 24 first if 4 weeks in and he's exactly what I expected. But I just spending that 105 just is a lot of capital for me on an injured tight end with 1 year of output that's aging. That's kind of where I sit with the whole thing. It's kind of what you just referred to with Allen, is like prove that you can hit. Like it seems steep for me.
My average price has been about the 107 for him in FFPC leagues. So that's been like kind of my average price. And I think that, Cody, you did hit on one very interesting thing there, was if you are worried about Kincaid, then you can absolutely use that pick and contact the Freiermuth manager, or you can go older, where you can trade for one of these older tight ends fairly easily with Kincaid, where you know what you're getting in 2023 and you hope that you're getting about the same in 2024, but you can flip Kincaid for that. Like he's in fuego right now in tight end premium.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Kincaid, I think he's an interesting pick because of his tight end designation that adds value in a league where unless you're either the haves or the have-nots. You know, if you're just plugging in tight end 9 every week, you're sometimes above water, and a lot of times you're not. So if you have the opportunity to get that guy, it's a lot cheaper than Kyle Pitts was, and he was a first-round tight end, right? You had to take Kyle Pitts with your first or second pick in non-superflex. At least now it's a back end of the first round, and you probably have a similar shot to at least be a top 5 tight end. Let's move on, though, because Kendre Miller, the running back that was drafted by the New Orleans Saints in the 3rd round, guys, got a little bit of a hype blurb going on, okay? Things are we need to refocus if this is the guy that we should be pushing up in the first round. I know Cody said that that's a possibility. You guys liked him as an all-purpose back, maybe a little bit light on the catches, 16 coming out of college, I believe, in that last year, but goes into New Orleans with Alvin Kamara. I would say there's a better than 50% chance he misses, the first month and a half of the season. We don't know yet. Jamal Williams is, a spirit animal at best, right? He's just someone that the coaches like on the team. Is this opening up for Kendre Miller to be like, we can just like fast forward to the rankings next year and he's like a 2nd round pick? So I'll start with Cody this time. And Cody, is the market undervaluing Miller, or am I just buying into that hype blurb that the assistant GM put out about him yesterday?
I think the value's proper, to be honest with you. I don't think he's deserving of a complete round one, like, 107, 108. I don't think he deserves to be in that conversation. I think, the 112 to 208 area, like anywhere in between there, I would consider that a fine value for Kendre and not overpaying, because when you look at him on the surface, you look at Alvin Kamara's contract, he's got an out after the 2024 or potential going into 2024 after the 2023 season. He's got $24 million in dead cap this year, 16 the following year. Like it's ballooned right now for Kamara. So you got the suspension, you got an out in your contract after the year. Then they have Jamal Williams there. I think Kendre is going to stay a value for an extended amount of time. You remember going back to even Kamara's rookie year when it was him and Ingram. And yes, Kamara had some big boom games, but so did Ingram. So I think it's a world where I don't think that Kendre is going to exactly like break out in year one, but I think there's going to be value there throughout to have him on your roster and for that potential thing to happen where there's a suspension for Kamara, Jamal gets hurt and all of a sudden you're thrusted into 22, 24, 26 touches in a consistent, week span. And I think this offense is going to be pretty efficient with Derek Carr coming over, and they got enough weapons on this offense. I think it's going to be an efficient offense. I don't think it's going to be a tier 1 offense by any means, but I think he's properly valued.
So he's a guy that I've been taking, Alan, in single QB leagues. I've really loved getting him at like the 112 and the 201.
Yeah.
That's been like a perfect spot for him. I've seen him go higher than that. We've seen a very high stakes league in FFPC where somebody, not my league, but a couple of high stakes players were talking about it. There was one very high stakes league where we went to 106. So there's people steaming Kendre. And here's the thing about Kendre is the NFL kind of explained to us the value that they have in him with the draft capital, because we didn't see him test and he still goes on day 2. So if he would have gone to the combine, he could have gone where Zach Charbonnet was. I think that, that was like, it was reassuring for him to get the day 2 draft capital. And then it's kind of a perfect entry point team for him, because he falls into a potential 3-headed backfield, which will scare off certain league mates of yours. They don't want to deal with that mess. But you have a 27-year-old Alvin Kamara. You have a 28-year-old Jamal Williams. This is the NFL. Father Time is undefeated. And Kendre Miller is 20 and a half years old. He's 215 pounds. And while he didn't have like the sheer receiving numbers, there was target competition on that team. They had multiple receivers drafted in the NFL this year, including Quentin Johnston, who was a 1st-round pick. So I think like he's the sort of back at 20 and a half years old that, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that catches like a massive amount of balls, but I think he's going to catch enough balls to be fantasy relevant. It could happen sooner than later with him. Like with older running backs, you mentioned the Alvin Kamara situation. like I like Jamal Williams. He's a fun player. The guy had a ton of touchdowns last year, but at the end of the day, Jamal Williams has always been a committee running back. He's had weeks of where he's the man. But if there's no Kamara, then Kendre Miller will rise this season's rankings. I'm not going to use that R word. And and the dynasty managers who took him will feel really a little bit better about year one. But it's not like it's not like a leap of faith here. You're investing in a 215-pound back with wheels, who's in a situation where he's surrounded by a 27 and 28-year-old back. I mean, it's going to happen at some point.
Cody, the big decision in these rookie drafts, and I know all the player profiler people that are in all these Patreon leagues and they're in their FFPC leagues, they're deciding, they're on the clock, they need a running back, they've committed to that, and they're looking at Kendre Miller, and they're looking at Devon Achane, the smaller back who went to Miami. So what's the correct pick? Which one of them is going to have more fantasy value over the next 3 seasons?
Kendre Miller. Like, what I know Theo is an Achane fan. I respect Achane, but I also understand that all these comps are complete fugazi, and that comparing him to a CJ Spiller, a Chris Johnson, any of these dudes that were back in the early 2000s, that how many carries did Chris Johnson have that year he went for 2,000? 360. There is zero worlds in this world where Devon Achane is going to have north of 200 touches in a season, in my opinion.
So what's the better comp for him? What if it's not those guys? Is it Darren Sproles, Cody?
It's the dudes in his own backfield. It's Mostert and it's Wilson. Like, that's the perfect, and that's like a respectable thing, but it's not value at the start of round 2, in my opinion. And he goes in there, he's going to fit well. Is there going to be a game where he maybe touches the 2022 area of touches in a game? Sure. But I don't think that's I don't think you can expect that week in and week out with a guy with this 185-pound frame that, he could do it a little bit in college, but he never did it on the long term. Even Chris Johnson, who took on that big of a workload, didn't last the longest in the NFL. I just don't see that in the real range of outcomes. And for that, I would take the 215-pound guy in Kendre Miller, who's not 21 years old yet, in an offense that has done it with a Kamara. Now they have Jamal. Like, there's enough bodies there to teach him every aspect of everything. You got Kamara, the elite receiver, and you got Jamal, the elite grinder inside the 10-yard line. He's going to learn and soak this up for the first year. And then Kendre, I mean, what's the ceiling for him in year 2, 3, 4? Like, where Devon Achane, it's like, okay, well, he could just get stuck in a flow where you see Mostert, you see Wilson, these guys, even like Elijah Mitchell, right? Elijah Mitchell's got that speed and he hits the edge quick and he can get up there. But what's the ceiling for that? Is the ceiling, he's going to score 27 touchdowns because he's, whatever, he's efficient? I don't think that there's a world where Achane can match Kendre, let alone surpass him in a 3, 4, 5 year span.
Theo, tell him why he's wrong.
So Achane, I'm into Kendre, and I've been drafting Kendre, but when I have a 110, like, that's Achane. Achane has been the FFPC. Achane is, guys, like, the thing about Achane, there's certainly more risk with the profile. Kendre Miller is a safer profile, but Achane does have that immense opportunity this year. And Cody, I will say this: the thing about Achane is, I think McDaniel has plans for him as a receiver out of the backfield. And I'm not in a massive way, but with that sort of explosiveness that he has, if they can unlock that, he's never going to be a incredible volume guy on the ground. It's not in his makeup. If you're looking for a guy who can handle 20 carries in an NFL game, it's Kendre Miller. Achane, though, has a path with his speed, with his explosiveness in that offense, with those two receivers. There's a path this year for Achane. And that does matter. Like, as much as I referenced the Kendre Miller this year, outs, Kendre Miller has outs this year, like where the Kamara suspension would elevate him, potentially overtaking Jamal Williams in a committee would elevate him. That's outs. Achane is going to be flat out the best back in Miami this season, in my opinion. You referenced Jeff Wilson, you referenced Raheem Mostert. Those are veterans. Those are guys that I think Achane can pass right away. And I think that you said this, on draft night. We're sitting there during the reaction where I'm brushing dirt off my shoulders because my man Achane lands in the nut spot to Miami, and you love the landing spot that night having those two backs in that committee will help him because you can have the most valuable touches can go to Achane, and I think Achane's also the kind of guy that you can use in gadget ways where they're going to do manufactured touches to have a third speed guy in that offense. Achane, we hate to elevate guys because of landing spot, I don't think that's the right way to do it. But Achane already had a day 2 grade. You already knew he was going to go day 2. He goes day 2 and he lands in a fantastic spot to a coach who knows how to use speed. I mean, it's been proven. Like the Mike McDaniel offense last year, you knew it was coming with those 2 guys, and it continually was successful, and he continued to get the ball in their hands. I think now with Achane, he has a potential third wheel, not nearly, the Waddle Tyreek Hill level, but a change of pace guy out of the backfield. You can use him as a receiver. You can use him in different ways. And with his speed, I think he's super interesting.
Cody, you'll get the final word here, and then we'll wrap up and we'll move on to the next.
I was gonna say, where did you have him though before the draft? Because like going into the draft, this was the only landing spot. We knew he was going to Miami. But I expected it to be at 51, not 85. Like you can say like, okay, he's going to get used in the passing game, right? What coach in their right mind would say, okay, this guy, he's similar to Mostert, he's similar to Wilson, he can run downhill, he's a great zone runner, put your foot in the dirt and go. He's got that 4.3 speed. Why use him? And I don't think he's got the best dexterity, the best lower body athleticism. He's a straight line guy. I don't see him having near the same athleticism as a Tyreek or a Jalen Waddle, being especially in the slot outside like this.
Agree with you.
But what I'm saying is you have the Tyreek and you have the Waddle. Why would you? I just don't see them actually using him out. And I understand like your theory behind it as far as leveraging him in fantasy football and getting the passing game work. I just, from a team perspective, seeing what they did, especially in San Francisco, I only think it elevates Tyreek Hill even more because I don't think so. It would be, is Devon Achane the Deebo Samuel role? No, I think that still belongs to Tyreek Hill, and it's always going to belong to Tyreek Hill. I don't think that, all this is going to do is just open up that for Tyreek, open up Tyreek Hill even more and more. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, stylistically,
all right, guys.
It's going to remind me, and I'll add one thing out.
Hold on one second, guys. We got to keep it moving. I think that what we're going to do is, we've heard 2 good arguments about it. We're going to let the jury decide. If you're in the chat, hold on one sec. We're going to let the jury decide. Is it Devon Achane with Theo's argument, or is it Cody's argument with Kendre Miller? I want you to decide. Put in the chat who's right. But we're going to move on because we got to. I mean, we could talk about it all day, but we have another.
You can draft.
I was going to say,
draft both.
He's closing the door on a Clyde Edwards, Jonathan Taylor conversation here.
But
guys, we're gonna move on right now. We're gonna move on. Great arguments on both sides, okay? And I can't decide. That's why I'm in 30 leagues. I'm gonna take half of each. I think these guys both make compelling arguments. All right. At the next topic we're gonna talk about is Kadarius Toney. It's so obvious to me that other than him missing a lot of games, and that's why Kadarius Toney is discounted in your dynasty startup leagues. Is he the obvious wide receiver 1 for Patrick Mahomes, who's already displayed electric upside, Theo Gremminger? Why the hell aren't we treating this guy like, in maybe just below some of those young elite guys? If his upside, Kadarius Toney, gets reached with Patrick Mahomes, we're talking about a top 5 wide receiver, top 10 wide receiver in dynasty fantasy football.
I don't want to have my heart broken by Kadarius Toney, Alan. Like, I think that we've done that before. I think if Kadarius Toney, I think that the price you're paying for him would probably be like a wide receiver 3 level price right now. I think you should be happy if he's returning you continual wide receiver 3 value. And with his athletic ability, he will have the spike weeks to kind of push that over the edge. I think that's an outcome that I think, is a reasonable one. If we're projecting Kadarius Toney to be some big time thing this year, I think everybody's going to get their hearts broken. Them drafting Rashee Rice is a guy, you talk about fantastic landing spots. Like Rashee Rice, I don't think is ever going to be a wide receiver 1 in this league, but I think that he's got a path to being a Tyler Boyd-like player attached to a great quarterback. I don't want to use the word gadget as like a negative thing, but Kadarius Toney is somewhat gadgety in the sense that you get manufactured touches for him. I don't want to get people's hopes up. I don't want to get the hype train going. I think if you have wide receiver 3 type production out of him with spike weeks, I think that would be a nice outcome. Cody, do you think there's anything more to Toney than that right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And you bring in Rashi, and I love Rashi, but Rashi by himself, he did not. He came in 15 pounds heavier than we thought he was to the Senior Bowl, and that was like a letdown because it was like 185 pounds. He kind of has this Garrett Wilson-esque feel to him. He came in 200 and he looked sloppy. He looked sluggish, and then he kind of grew throughout the entire process. And I think you bring up the Tyler Boyds of the world. I think Adam Thielen's of the world. So it's like borderline 2-3 in an offense would be the ideal spot for a Rashee Rice.
Oh,
the question is, who in this offense is the number one, right? There's Marquez Valdez-Scantling is not a number one. He's a stretch by himself. He's going to be out there being his own thing. So right now you're looking at Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, I think, for who's going to be that one. And both of these guys have that dog, that nasty in them, where they have I wouldn't say that, okay, so when I say alpha's right, Jefferson, Chase, Evans, DK, right? They don't have that level alpha, but they do have the Garrett Wilson level alpha where they can come out and they can lead an offense in targets. And I don't see a world where, I do see a world where Kadarius Toney competes with Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney beats out Sky Moore for that number one role, right, in quotations, because obviously Kelsey is there and he's the mainstay. But when you look at Toney last year, I tweeted this out back in February. I said wide receiver 1, Kadarius Toney for the Kansas City Chiefs. 49.2% route win rate, which would have been 10th across the NFL, ahead of Jalen Waddle. 52.5% route win rate versus zone. That's ahead of CeeDee Lamb. 52.5% is hella good, but he didn't qualify because he didn't run enough routes last year. So if Kadarius Toney can stay healthy, and that's the number one thing, right? But at the value you're paying for Kadarius Toney right now, I don't see why you don't click that button. I'm going to be clicking it in 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026, unless something drastic happens and he's maybe out of the league. But I love Kadarius Toney, and I don't see why Patrick Mahomes couldn't elevate him.
It's so easy to see Kadarius Toney being elevated to that elite level next year. It's so hard to unsee what we saw with that elite upside. It's just that injury. You're getting the commensurate discount with a player like that. That's what's so great about it.
But also Sky's there. Sky's there too. So Sky is like a different piece to this entire thing that can derail him or enhance him, because we didn't see a lot out of Sky last year, but I think they both have a lot to bring to the table. So, it could eat at each other, or I don't know. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy though.
So it's going to be 150 targets for Kelsey again. Check.
Yep.
The thing about Sky Moore is it's Sky Moore and Toney. I do think have like kind of conflicting skill sets where they both can do some of the similar things. So I think they do kind of if they're going to both be out there consistently, it brings both of them down slightly. If one would go away, then there would be like a more clear path for me. That's what makes Rice interesting, because Rice is different than those other two. Rice has more size. Rice is just he's different than pretty much any other wide receiver in that offense. You talk about MVS as a role player, just a downfield threat. That's pretty much it. But I think it's going to be a little bit more balance than we like to see in terms of the wide receiver target tree. And I think that we also have to remember that McKinnon is going to be a Chief again this year, and he'll be a take away a couple of weekly targets as well. It's going to be a great offense. I think that it's reasonable to take bets on all three of those guys right now in Dynasty, because, Alan, none of them are super expensive. I actually put a Twitter poll out a couple weeks ago, and I said, who is going to be more valuable 1 year from today? Kadarius Toney, Rashee Rice, or Sky Moore? And Kadarius Toney gets like 55% of the vote, and then it's like split down the middle with the other two. So there's opportunities and entry points for all three of them right now in Dynasty, Alan.
The other thing that we have to remember is that Patrick Mahomes hasn't really found a guy that's as reliable as Kelsey. And if that proves to be any one of these guys, he will undoubtedly, he's a smart football player, go to them, right? If Sky Moore proves that he can handle 9 targets a game and really turn those into something, you better believe. And that would probably come from Kelsey or maybe some of the other pieces of the pie, guys. We're talking about wide receivers when you mentioned Rashee Rice. And earlier in the live stream, we were talking about the end of the first round. As we drip into the second round of our rookie drafts, Marvin Mims, the wide receiver drafted by the Denver Broncos, Cody, he seems to go anywhere from 2-5 to the end of the round. I mean, it looks like he's blocked now, but what have we learned in Dynasty Fantasy Football? What's blocked today can be completely wide open tomorrow. So where should drafters that are in their rookie drafts be looking at Marvin Mims, and what kind of a player do you expect him to be for fantasy?
I love Marvin Mims, and this is really weird. It's a really hard button to press. You're sitting in drafts and you're looking at Jaden Reed or you're looking at Mims. You're getting to the end of the third and you're looking at all these tight ends, the Laportas of the world, the Washingtons of the world, or you're looking at Mims. And nobody wants to click on that Mims button because he's in Denver, and it's like it's Denver. Russ wasn't good last year. They have Sutton and Judy. They have running backs, whatever. It's a new offense. But then you pull yourself back and you go, yeah, but Mims was pretty efficient at Oklahoma for back-to-back years with Caleb Williams and Dylan Gabriel. And then what did Sean Payton do his first year in New Orleans? He drafted Kenny Stills in the 5th round. Kenny Stills came in, I think he had 680 or something like this, 680 receiving yards. The next year, even though with Kenny Stills on the roster, he drafts Brandon Cooks 1st round. Body shape, body type, similar as Marvin Mims, these two are. He trades Kenny Stills and he rolls with Brandon Cooks. I think this is that guy for Sean Payton. I think this is Sean Payton's Brandon Cooks, and I think this is Russell Wilson's Tyler Lockett. It's going to be a guy that's forever he just feels like that guy that's going to be forever valuable, and everyone's going to disrespect the name, disrespect the value, disrespect where he's going in drafts, and you're just going to continue to hit the button. Remember, KJ Hamler's got a torn pec. He's out 4 to 6 months. This is Marvin Mims' job, and I don't see a reason why he can't pick it up, put it down in year 1 for Denver. And is Courtland Sutton, is he on the downhill? Is Jerry Jeudy going to stay there? I don't know, but I do know that Marvin Mims is going to be there for the next 4 years, and I do know that Sean Payton used his first pick. He actually moved up a few spots to get Marvin Mims. I like that. I trust that. I like value. I'll take the value of Marvin Mims. Where you're going to get him, you can take him literally anywhere. I took him at the 203 because I had the 202, 203, and 204 in a draft, but I've also seen him fall to the end of round 2. I've seen him fall to the 301. So, I'd love to hear where Theo's, if he's taken him at all or where he fell to for him. But for me, if I'm on the clock anywhere in that range, I will take Mims over the likes of a Laporta for the similar reasons I talked about earlier. It's not because I don't like Laporta. It's because I'll wait and see, prove it to me, and then I'll come get you at tight end. And Mims is just going to be a guy I think continually valuable.
I love Mims. I've been drafting the hell out of Mims, and I said, like Cody said, it's been in a pretty much the whole 2nd round range, Alan. I took him at the 211. I've taken him in the high 2nd round as well. I've seen him slide in at like the 1-2 turn maybe once, but most of the time he's living in the 2nd round. The thing about Mims is it's sort of like Kendre Miller. You get a discount because of the crowded situation. But Mims is the youngest wide receiver there. And also, this is a guy like Cody mentioned, Sean Payton traded up to get. They didn't have a pick in round 2. He traded into round 2 to leapfrog somebody to get Mims. So, we talk about like the Judys, the Suttons. But at the end of the day, Denver was dead last in points per game last year. Javonte Williams is out. Samaje Perine is the running back of choice right now. They are starving for offensive weapons who can do things with the ball in their hands. And Marvin Mims can win in different ways. He's 21 years old. Cody referenced the efficiency. We know he's got the wheels. He tested great at the combine. This is a great entry point opportunity for you as a dynasty manager because of Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. And at the end of the day, a year from now, he's going to be worth more than Sutton. And I'd say that you could put a percentage that he could be worth more than Jeudy in a year. I wouldn't bet money on it. Like, I like Jeudy. He's got a clean profile, but these things change in Dynasty. He'll be worth more than Sutton in a year easily. Trade equity right now, he already is worth more.
Quote it.
Do you guys remember when CeeDee Lamb was perceived in a crowded wide receiver core because Amari Cooper was ahead of him? That was a thing that actually happened in Dynasty drafts, Theo.
Yeah, but so CeeDee was so locked in those drafts that he was still going high despite that. Yeah, the Gallup, the Amari, and then CeeDee.
It was a thing.
But
it was a thing.
You still didn't get like a super discount. Like Mims, you're getting a real discount. He's not as clean a prospect as CeeDee. And then I'm glad you referenced CeeDee because Oklahoma wide receivers used to always fail, and now they've been hitting. CeeDee Lamb and Hollywood Brown both hit, and now you get Marvin Mims coming in there. And Cody, you make an interesting point because I really like Jaden Reed, and I know that's one of your guys as well. But if I'm looking for 2023 production in that 2nd round range, I would probably lean with Reed. Bingo. because Reed has the clear path this year. But if I'm looking at a 3-year window, I'm going with Mims. Mims is younger than him. He's considerably younger. It's a 21-year-old versus a 23-year-old. And again, they're both 2nd round picks. Reed gets selected earlier. But 2023 production, I think Reed is safe. Unless Jerry Jeudy goes down, then it's going to be Reed outscoring, Marvin Mims. But over the next 3 years, I'll take Mims out producing Reed.
3 years. 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 3 years.
All right,
Agreed.
we're going to
even look at that offense too. The offense is just exciting by itself. People are going to continue to hate on it, but I mean, it's Sean Payton.
Yeah.
He went and got him. It's Russell Wilson. He's only going to get more efficient, and you're competing, like you said, it's Jordan Love and it's Jaden Reed and Christian Watson. It's a whole different dynamic in both worlds. So yeah, I like that.
Cody, my next question is going to be for you, but I just need you to help me make a pick right now while I'm on the clock. Am I taking Josh Downs or am I taking Marvin Mims in my most important dynasty league? What's that going to be?
Ready, Theo? On 3, say it.
It's
1,
Marvin Mims.
2,
Sorry.
3. Marvin Mims.
Okay.
I like Downs a lot, Alan, but you can let the NFL be your guide here. And also a slot wide receiver attached to Anthony Richardson, a scrambling QB. That is be tough. Your out is Downs being worth more than Pittman a year from now, which is really, really hard to see because I don't see a whole lot of wide receivers. Like I think Downs will be a useful player, but if you're looking for a guy that can reach wide receiver 2 level, it's Mims. Downs will be in the league a long time though. He's a very good player. I like him, but
isn't that the same situation you were talking about earlier, guys, with the Jordan Addison? I was going to say because he can never be the wide receiver 1 on his own team. You're hoping he's the wide receiver 2. It looks like he's going to be, but when you're talking about him versus Quentin Johnston or someone that you don't like as much, those guys all seem to have the ability to ascend to the wide receiver 1. So why is it different with these second round wide receivers, guys?
Well, there's Addison has the draft capital. Addison has the very clean profile, and I think that Minnesota is a extremely pass happy team. We've seen this in the past, so it's
aren't the Chargers too with Quentin Johnston there? That's my point. It's Quentin Johnston versus Addison, and then the other section that we're comparing it to is Mims versus any of those receivers in the second round. We talked about Downs.
Quentin Johnston to me never projects to be a guy that's going to be a massive target type guy. Like I think that you're talking about a potential wide receiver 1 in the sense that
on his own team,
in the sense that there's a path there because of the age of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But I think at the end of the day, Quentin Johnston he projects more into like a Mike Williams role, where you're sort of capped by the target ceiling there. And I think more likely than not, if Keenan Allen moves on next year, they're going to be forced to bring in another wide receiver. So I mean, Johnston landed extremely, extremely well, whereas Jordan Addison, he lands into a situation with a wide receiver who commands targets in Justin Jefferson and a tight end who commands targets in Hawkinson. But I do believe it's going to be a very consolidated target tree between the 3 of them. I think Osborne slides down to a natural role where he'll be a weekly pop guy more than a guy you're leading on weekly production. But Addison also now has the advantageous matchup every single week in that offense because defenses have to key on Justin Jefferson, who's arguably the best offensive player in the entire league. And I think that Addison has always had to have, this defensive attention no matter where he's gone. Now he's going to go up against number 2 cornerbacks. He wins in the similar fashion that like Stephon Diggs or Jerry Jeudy can win. And I think it's such an easy path for Addison. And Alan, we talk about wide receiver 1s, multiple players hitting in the same offenses all the time in fantasy football. You think about the Godwins and the Evans you talked about earlier. You talk about the T. Higgins and the Jamar Chases. I mean, this is a continual thing. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. These top-notch wide receivers, when they play next to one another, they usually elevate each other. Yeah. So, it's Cody. I mean, you have anything to add with that?
Well, here we're going to close that up because I need to ask Cody about another situation. I think that at that point we put that which wide receiver to take in the second round. Now these guys both say Marvin Mims. Let Josh Downs fall to the third round in some cases. But Cody, one of the things that I noticed being in 38 dynasty leagues, I don't even need to check ADP. I see ADP moving in real time in real leagues, okay? So why do I keep seeing Zach Evans, the rookie running back that was drafted in the 5th or 6th round by the Rams, 6th round? He keeps going he went undrafted in one of my rookie 5-round leagues to 5th round to 4th round. Now I'm seeing him routinely taken in the early part of the third round. What's happened with Zach Evans? And this was like a Debbie Darling, right? So start with the beginning. How did he rise, fall, and now he's moving back up again?
Well, he's one of the all-time best prospects coming out of high school as a running back out of Texas. He goes to TCU and, of course, has a couple good seasons, but he stays banged up. He's off the field. He's on the field and he plays a couple games. It is what it is. And then Kendre comes in there, and Kendre does great. Emari Demercado does great. And Zach Evans is like, well, peace out, I'm leaving. He goes over to Ole Miss, and he has a good season, well, he played with Quinshon Judkins is going to be one of the best running backs we've seen going forward in 2024, 2025, whichever year he comes out. So Evans has kind of been dealt with situations that have been suboptimal in college, whether he's been off the field or on the field. When he is on the field, of course, it's playing with Kendre and Judkins. Evans has massive hands. Evans is hyper talented. I talked about this early in the process last fall, saying that, Bijan's the clear uno in this class. It's not close, but if there's one guy in this class that has a talent and the upside and the ability to overtake Bijan in the 3-5 year glance, it would be Zach Evans, because Evans was perceived to come in at 215 pounds, have the 4.4 speed, have the hyper talent, have the upside, have the abilities in the pass catching game. Like a Kamara, he came in at 205. He looked slender. He looked lean. He didn't have the best interviews. And then, of course, the off-field stuff, which I've talked to a couple people that, that we're both friends with that lived down in Texas and said, he isn't maybe the most friendly person off the field. Maybe he's had a couple of situations that are just like awkward and weird. And
Cody,
that rubbed off on his team.
They always talk about off field with him. But again, my very peripheral understanding is that it's not like he was involved in anything nefarious. It was just, like you said, that he's a little bit hardened, maybe the way he grew up and something about his patriarch, his grandfather passing. So isn't that someone you kind of want on your team?
Kind of, but in the same sense, it's like, and again, I don't know anything deep about this guy, so I don't want to be, that dude. But what I will say is everything I've heard has been just like these odd verbals of communication where it's like he's just not quite, like, maybe you say normal, like he's all the way there. He just, maybe he doesn't care about, like I could say, I don't like people. I only like certain people that communicate and I click with. He might be the same way. He might be a guy that just is like, if I don't mess with you, I don't mess with you. That might just literally be how he ticks. I don't know. But everything that we've heard from interviews and things like that, it's been negative towards him in that facet. And he has the talent to be a second round pick, point blank. It's just that there's just like flag after flag after flag, pushed him down to the 6th round. I think that this Rams backfield, to come full circle and answer the question, is I think he does have special traits. McVay is 1,000,000% correct on that. That's what I just got done saying. 5-star prospect. He goes in. He's got weird situations. If they can dial him in, which, remember, Cam Akers wasn't the cleanest crystal on the tree neither. So he comes in, he plays with a Cam Akers that maybe came through some situations. Cam Akers worked with Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook maybe teaches Cam Akers. Cam Akers teaches Zach Evans, so on and so forth. You're looking at a situation that is ideal for Zach Evans. Also, my boy Tion Evans is in there as well. So there's 2 Evanses in Los Angeles. But I do think Zach Evans has the traits, and going undrafted in rookie drafts is interesting.
Not anymore.
He goes undrafted.
Not anymore, right, Theo? Where's he going in FFPC now, Theo?
I was going to say, I'm adding him right now to taxi squads.
The two guys that I feel like there's a couple of guys where people end up kind of attaching themselves to. It's Chase Brown and it's Zach Evans, because they both land into kind of clear handcuff type roles. Eric Gray slightly gets put into that mix too, because he landed so perfectly behind Saquon. Zach Evans is interesting though, because like it's difficult to bet on these very late draft pick guys, because their chance of making the team kind of is already a difficult one. But he lands very, very well where his competition is like Kyron Williams and an undrafted Tion Evans. So if he ends up winning the handcuff role in year 1, there's going to be some juice right there in terms of what dynasty managers like. It's just kind of difficult though, Alan, betting on a super, super late round guy, because they're, the NFL teams are always kind of view them as replaceable. They don't really hit that often. So I don't want to, we talk about windows, like treat Zach Evans as a handcuff this year. If you have Cam Akers, prioritize getting Zach Evans. And Chase Brown's getting almost overdrafted at this point. I see Chase Brown going in the 2nd round of FFPC drafts, Alan. He's getting steamed up to the 2nd round of FFPC drafts. So that I did not expect, and I'm seeing some, very sharp drafters getting in on Chase. I think they're betting on Chase Brown having the Pirine role from last year, and they're thinking that there's an out with Joe Mixon where some situation might go south, which I think that kind of ship has sailed with Mixon. I think if anything if the Bengals believed that there would have been anything where Mixon would have missed time this year, I think they would have drafted somebody earlier or brought in a free agent already.
I was saying we talked about using the redraft market in Dynasty. Joe Mixon's a riser in the underdog redraft market, so I think that skepticism is quieting down. I love what Theo just said about pumping the brakes, even on the sharp drafters with Chase Brown. But last year, Tyler Allgeier was in a similar situation, Cody. Could Chase Brown or Zach Evans be this year's Tyler Allgeier in a sense where they get an opportunity as a 5th-round running back, 6th-round running back?
I mean, the Chase Brown one makes sense only in that Joe Mixon situation, right? Dwayne McBride, I'm not a massive fan of Dwayne McBride. I know Theo is. He feels like he could potentially be that Tyler Allgeier.
Not anymore, Cody. When he went in the 7th round, I pumped the brakes.
So
I'm dead serious, though. I'm dead serious. I mean, Delvin's not going to play with the Vikings this year. And you're looking at Alexander Mattison and Dwayne McBride. Like this organization did not, this current staff did not bring in Alexander Mattison, right? So McBride has the abilities. I'm not saying he's a bad football player. He's just not an ideal one for PPR situations exactly. But as far as Evans goes for this year, no, I wouldn't say that. As far as Chase Brown goes, I think it's a very interesting situation. The minute Mixon suspended or misses it any time at all, I think 100% that is aligned. But I do want to say one thing about Zach Evans before we do move on, and that is, do pump your brakes, because Kyron Williams and Ronnie Rivers are the polar opposite of Zach Evans when it comes to the off-field situation stuff, and they're both on the roster as well, and they both proved last year, despite us not liking them, that they can play football.
And Alan, this year's Tyler Allgeier is fairly easy. It's right in front of you. It's Roschon Johnson is going to be the day 3 running back who's got the clearest path. He was a 4th-round guy, goes to Chicago. All he's got to do is beat out Deonta Foreman and Khalil Herbert. It's right there. But this year's rookie draft class, like you talk about being able to get year 1 production out of guys. A lot of these guys that you can get in the 3rd round, 4th round of your rookie drafts, they have paths to usable weeks. This is a handcuff class. A lot of these guys landed in potential handcuff situations. Eric Gray is the guy who I would bet on being the handcuff to Saquon Barkley. Okay, Tank Bigsby is the handcuff to Etienne.
Wait. What about all the guys that they got in Jacksonville? Because people are asking this question. I don't want you to zoom past it.
It's Bigsby.
What about Dearness Johnson? What about Hasty? What about? I mean, they're loaded up. They're Snoop from last year. None of these guys have a chance.
No,
Hasty will be cut. Snoop will be cut.
Okay. And well, they could even keep Hasty, because I feel like Hasty's a valuable receiver. He's a receiver, special teams guy,
practice squad guy,
and. So you have Tyjae Spears is the clear cuff to Derrick Henry plus. So like Bigsby and Spears are interesting because they can each carve out a weekly role, despite playing behind running backs who were successful last year. Evan Hull has a path to being the handcuff in Indianapolis. And Israel Abanikanda lands in a crowded situation in New York. But if you're looking for a like-for-like replacement for Breece Hall, Abanikanda would be the one I would bet on over Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight. So it's a really fun class because you have the elite running backs at the top. Then you have that group of running backs that we talked about, like with Kendre and Achane, like that interesting group. Then you go down and you're looking at all these potential cuffs. So it's a really good running back class. Like people can hate on it all you want, but they're wrong to do so. This is going to be a class that's going to make waves this year and over the next few years.
I'm going to give Cody the final word, then we're going to move on.
No, that was it. That was everything I had. My note was on the Zach Evans thing, just to stay cognizant of the situation, because even though, and Theo just did a very good job running through all the other situations in the NFL, but like we opened this whole conversation with Zach Evans, and I'm just saying, just pump the brakes on him. Yes, he's at the traits, but there's a more than likely chance that he's not going to have a ton of output this year.
The only thing I'll add to this is just from a strategy perspective is when you collect these running backs in your rookie draft in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, what you're hoping for is to use these guys in 2-week windows, like Khalil Herbert, when David Montgomery went down. Don't think like, hey, I'm going to have these guys and they're going to send to the workhorse. Very rarely happens. Elijah Mitchell even was the best case scenario we've seen in the last few years. So you draft an Izzy A. If you Abanikanda, Izzy A, as I call him, but Abanikanda, then you get 1 week, 2 weeks out of him. It's paid the bills for you. All right, guys. Superflex leagues, they're exploding in popularity. We live in that Superflex world. I know the FFPC world is a little bit more single quarterback, but it's impossible. When I say that, put that in air quotes, to even trade for these guys. So the best and the cheapest the quarterbacks are in the startup draft. So who are a couple of the guys that we're talking about here that, could qualify as like a modern day sleeper, in the short list? And these are ugly names. Or even if you're in an existing league and you're just in quarterback hell at your second quarterback spot, a couple of the guys I really want to talk to about their fantasy viability are Sam Howell and Baker Mayfield specifically, because one is they're both going to be starting quarterbacks. So Theo, either of those guys, even though it's ugly, if you were in QB2, if you had Tom Brady retire, if you have Ryan Tannehill sitting there and you're not thrilled about using him this year, do either of those guys appeal? And what would you do to trade for them, if at all?
I don't really want either one of those guys as my quarterback 2 in Dynasty. Because
you don't want them there, right? We don't want them.
I don't want them there. And also, Alan, we talk about I don't think it's difficult betting on those guys because that they're probably not going to be the starting quarterback a year from now. Like Sam Howell would have to put up a massive amount of fantasy points, and Washington would also have to win a lot of games in a difficult division for me to envision him holding on to that. That he's a placeholder right now with a little bit of upside only because he's young. I don't think Sam Howell is awful. I think he'll put up fantasy points, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that you want to look at as a long-term answer at quarterback. The move to make if you're in a super flex league is go out and trade for Geno Smith before the market moves on him. Geno Smith right now and people got mad at me for saying this, so I have to preference this. It's a top 2 wide receiver core. I can't say that he has the best wide receivers in the league because Cincinnati Bengals people will just roast me. But it's a top 2. Well, Cody, that's a good one right there. But you're going to take KJ Osborne in that same with
Hawk
Jefferson?
Daddy?
Well, Hawk Daddy's the tight end. You can't change up the positions.
All right. You know what? We'll have this debate in a moment here.
Geno Smith is the one you want to go get, Alan.
Right, but Geno's expensive. You're not going to be able to get what I'm saying.
Jared Goff is interesting because people don't view him as a long-term guy. And Geno, you say Geno's expensive. I don't think the market is where Geno should be. I'll say this, I would rather have Desmond Ridder on my team than I would Baker Mayfield or Sam Howell if you want to go with the cheaper guys. Because I think that Ridder, there's a chance that Atlanta gets priced out of the elite quarterbacks again because they're going to win a lot of games this year. In that division, not a lot of games, but I think Atlanta can be a 9-10 win team.
That's a lot.
with Bijan Robinson running the ball with a decent defense in a winnable division. They're going to get to a point where they're not going to get Caleb Williams and they're not going to get Drake May. And they're going to say, you know what? Desmond Ridder won, 9-10 games this year. Let's give him another year as kind of a placeholder quarterback. So you might get a 2-year window out of Ridder. I don't see that with Baker Mayfield and Sam Howell. I think you're really dumpster diving with those two.
Yeah, and Cody, you've been in these leagues where you try getting a quarterback. It's so difficult unless you want to, give $1.25 or $1.40. So what I'm asking you guys, and you're doing a great job, if I have a contending team, but I'm always getting nothing out of that QB2 spot, who are some of the dented cans, dollar guys, or someone I can get maybe from my early second round pick just to fill that void this year?
Well, that's so the Sam. I was just looking up on our trade finder right now and player profiler, kind of the pricing for these guys, and really what I'm looking at is Geno's going for between that 1.8 and that 1.12 rookie pick, and Sam Howell's in the 2 area, 2.6 to 2.10, and I'm trying to look at Mayfield and Geno, and it's I think I would take the Ridders and the Mayfields because they've proven week after week after week, every conversation that comes up, it's okay, are they going to get Lamar? Are they going to get Anthony Richardson? Are they going no? And Atlanta's just continuing to double down on Ridder. So that's this year, right? It's all in on Ridder. And I think as far as pricing goes, Ridder's going to be a guy where you're not going to have to pay that much for him and you're guaranteed to get the whole season because if they nuke it and they win 4 games, they're obviously going to bring in a Caleb or a Drake May. But if they win 10, 11 games, you can see the world where he just continues to be a mid-level guy like a Ryan Tannehill, et cetera, and he has this job for the next couple of years. It's just because the team's solid enough where if he doesn't completely suck, they're going to win at least 8 games, I think. And there's enough talent around him where I think he can score fantasy points. The other one, you brought up Baker Mayfield. I don't think Sam Darnold belongs on this list, but that's here nor there. Baker Mayfield,
wait.
I think
Sam Darnold belongs on the list because he could get four starts this year easily for one of the best offenses. No,
get out of here.
Get out. I'm good.
And Alan, I'll also say that there's a 24-year-old quarterback whose team had 3 day 2 receivers selected and has 2 very decent running backs, if not good, better than good.
Theo's
And
doing
said,
this TikTok style where he's not telling us the name.
It's another cheap guy to go
His
get.
name
is Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Jordan Love right now is going outside of the top 24 in a lot of leagues. And I think
Jordan Love can't. He's costing you 2 first rounders because there's the unknown upside in the leagues I'm in. Someone's offered me pick 108, 109 for my. I'm telling them like this: go away. I'm not selling Jordan Love for a first round pick in a super flex league. That I'm holding on to him.
So so you talk about like a Sam Howell or Baker Mayfield. I think that the way that you treat those kind of guys is you try to trade up. You can trade one of those guys with picks to try to get a better quarterback. And the guys we talked about are not so expensive that they're unattainable if you have another quarterback in that deal.
Yeah. Cody, so I love what Theo just said about trading up. In the situation, the hypothetical that I gave you, because this is a lot of situations in my dynasty leagues where I ignored quarterback. Yeah. And where I had Tom Brady retire. You know, it's just, and I just don't know what to do because nobody's going. I've offered pick 108 for Geno Smith. People they don't even counter me because it's a non-starter. So is there anyone else? I mean, up until, so go ahead.
Baker's the one I think, I'm seeing all over the trade finder right now, 308, 207, like all over in that range.
You could get Baker. You can get him.
Again, Theo's grinning right now because it's Baker, but like Arian said, he had Baker graded higher than any of these dudes in this class. Take that for whatever the hell you want. I don't think it's proper, but it is what it is. Baker can still play football. He's had weird situations everywhere he's been, and you have Godwin, what? Mike Evans, what? Cam Brate, what? Cade Otton, what? Rachaad White, what? Like, there's talent around him, and they got bookend tackles. So I think that they're going to be fine, and the defense isn't bad. So, again, are they going to have 660 pass attempts? No. But I think Baker Mayfield can return value if he's competent. We'll just see if he's competent. That's
the first time in the history of the world that somebody's gone Cam Brate. What?
Right. Like Cam Brate didn't Cameron Brate retire, guys? I think he's not I think he retired. Theo, you're the perfect guy to ask this next question here because you play in a lot of the FFPC tight end premiums. I know in my league sometimes they have the double tight end starts or the 2 PPR. So you see those tight ends get attacked guys early and often. I just can't do it. Mentally, I just can't not take the wide receivers I like. So I want to talk about some of the rookies that are in this draft class, or maybe the wait on tight end players in your dynasty startup leagues. Everyone's jumping in these dynasty startup leagues. So Theo, start with Chig. Where does Chigoziem Okonkwo, the tight end on the Tennessee Titans, and how does he compare to the rookie tight end? So if I'm on the clock and I've waited, put Dalton Kincaid to the side. Let's talk about the second round tight ends, the third round tight ends, and how does Chig fit into that let's say that ranking, because he goes after all of those rookies right now because of the rookie hype.
Well, because of the rookie hype, also because the draft capital also matters a little bit. Not so much with tight ends. I think that for me, the big 3 rookie tight ends and Chig should all be inside of your top 12 dynasty tight end rankings. But for me, when it comes down to it, I have a ton of Chig in Dynasty. But if I had an opportunity to pivot to a Michael Mayer or a Sam Laporta, I would probably do it, Alan, begrudgingly, because those guys have such a clear path. But I love Chig. Like, if you tell me now we drop down to Chig versus Musgrave, I'm going to go with Chig. But that would be kind of my cutoff. I would have him as tight end 4 if he was in this class. And I'm sure if the NFL had the opportunity to redraft and Chig, based on what you saw last year, was available in this class, I think he would be drafted much higher than he was last year. I think he would have ended up in, the third round here instead of being a day 3 guy. So I love Chig. I think Chig, if you have Chig on your dynasty rosters, don't sell low because you've already kind of beat out what you gave up cost-wise, because you might have a weekly low-end tight end 1 this year. And look at the target competition in Tennessee. It's disgusting what they have put together on that roster. Treylon Burks is going to handle all he can handle, but Chig should have weekly targets. And we saw, like, when Chig made his kind of leap into fantasy relevance last year, he was getting like 5 targets a game. There's a chance that it could be that with maybe a little bit more. And we know that he's the kind of guy that can do a lot after the catch and potentially do well in the red zone. So I'm in on Chig, but I would take Laporta over him, and I would take Mayer.
Cody, rank these guys for me because it's a decision that a lot of people watching the Sonic Truth podcast, they're going to be faced with that decision.
Ranking these guys in Dynasty, I would probably lean Laporta by a nut hair over Chig, and then it's a big gap to Musgrave. Chig,
But
I
Mayer,
think
but you have Mayer before both of those guys, Cody?
yeah.
Okay,
I put
yeah.
Mayer before
Okay, so
this.
let's just get this straight. Mayer it would be one. We're talking about the second round tight ends and Okonkwo. So you have Mayer 1, and then you said, who was your number 2, Cody? Laporta?
Sam Laporta.
Are you in
Laporta.
agreement with those two?
Yes.
Okay. Then you have Chig and then Musgrave.
Yeah, but there's like I said, a nut hair between Laporta and
You said a nut hair. What if I'm clean shaven down there?
then there's no difference. It's right there.
And the
It's
chat was
touching.
waiting for this, Alan. The chat has
it's
been
touching.
calling. You've been
I
saying
have-
that.
And then
You haven't had a moment
between Chig and Musgrave, it's like a full length blonde. Like, so
does that
that's
surprise you, by the way, that I'm clean shaven down there or hairy? Because I have a hairy back, but I'm telling you, it's the weirdest thing. I look at myself naked in the mirror and I'm completely shaven and bare down there, but it's very hairy on the shoulders. Does that surprise you at all?
You're imbalanced. You're like an imbalanced roster, Alan.
It's very disturbing when I look at myself. I'm telling you, it's not a good look.
So I'm gonna go with Chig there, but I think Chig is a close between Laporta and he, because you look exactly what Theo just said about the target distribution in Tennessee right now, and they didn't bring in much. They brought in Josh Wiley, who's going to be a couple-year project, and I like Josh Wiley, but when I was talking to Teron Davenport, who is the best reporter for my book in Tennessee, I was talking to him at the NFL Combine, and basically said, what's the expectation for Chig? And he goes, they love Chig. They love Chig. And like, that's all you need to know. Like, these reporters for these teams know more than we do. So if you can talk to every single one of them, and that's the one thing that they love Chig. And then they don't bring in very much target, competition, and it's Burks and him essentially. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. There's a reason we got him top 10 in Dynasty right now.
Yeah.
Theo, my wife is standing 5 feet from me. She just palm-faced and walked out of the room. I think she's sickened by my statement, but Cody glossed over that probably to the the benefit of the chat.
Or maybe she's upset that you didn't take a chance to shave the shoulders, and she heard you say that, and she went,
Right. No, you're right.
Get rid of the hair on the shoulders.
He's gonna be rubbing his shoulder hair in my face tonight.
Well, I'm telling. That's why I always lower the lights before romance, because I don't want that look to be she might run out of the room. All right, but
it's his beard.
That's right. All right, guys. Good conversation there on the tight ends, but the one that you didn't talk about is, tell me if I'm saying this right. Is it Luke Schoonemaker? Is that how you say his name? The Dallas Cowboys tight end, Theo. I've heard some good things about him. It looks like the Dallas got jumped. They were in on Kincaid. Is Schoonemaker the sleeper tight end, especially in these premium leagues that nobody's talking about yet?
I think that the move you can make is you can get Jake Ferguson very cheap, because I think that Luke Schoonemaker is going to be used as kind of like I think they'll use him as an H-back type. I think they'll use him in 2 tight end sets. He's extremely athletic. It's such a weird draft pick that they made where
Why?
they took him.
Why is it
he's
weird?
like 20. He's going to be 25 years old this year. He's 25 years old. And it was just like, we would have gotten so excited if Dallas would have just took our boy Tucker Kraft right there at the end of the second round. We would be like, the whole community would be, you would see Tucker Kraft going so high in these FFPC league drafts, which is another issue with Musgrave, by the way, is Cody and I love Tucker Kraft, and Tucker Kraft could easily be, a year from now more valuable in Dynasty than Musgrave. But this, like, Schoonemaker, it's like, I've seen a couple of people drafting him. I just can't get on that train. He's old. I think that it's a classic, like him and Brenton Strange at the end of the second round. Neither of those guys are guys I would bet on, despite the second round capital. Strange kind of projects to be like a blocker. Cody, you would agree on that with your Strange as a...
Strange is going to be a good football player.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be, a big value for us in fantasy. I'm glad you had that stance on Schoonemaker. I thought a week ago maybe you were a little too high on him, but I think being 20, I mean, he's literally
he's older than Cody. He's older than Cody.
He's 4 weeks younger than Irv Smith, and he's about a year older.
Irv came into the league really young. Schoonemaker obviously a little bit very old.
Bingo.
So, yeah.
Bingo. And it's like, you just look at the grand crop of the grand scheme of this whole crop of tight ends, and it's like, yeah, I mean, he's a year younger than Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz just went through an entire contract. Like, it's a weird pick. Kraft would have been the tits at that spot, exactly like Theo said. But yeah, man. I mean, he's older than Cole Kmet.
We'll call him Vilas Schoonmaker from now on, Alan. He's Vilas Schoonmaker.
I like that.
All right, guys, hype videos in Dynasty Fantasy Football. It's amazing what they do. And we try to say that we're going to shield ourselves from these hype videos. Every year, but it just doesn't work. And you can take advantage of this if you don't fall for the hype. But, guys, I saw this padless flag football throw from Justin Fields to DJ Moore explode Twitter, move DJ Moore's ADP up about 2 rounds in Redraft and in Dynasty. So we all love DJ Moore, but it's, he hasn't had the quarterback yet. Theo Gremminger, what is the proper valuation in Dynasty Fantasy Football? Give me a couple players that are going right now ahead of DJ Moore that you think is just wrong and that we should wait for DJ Moore to come to us.
Well, I'm in on DJ Moore.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not avoiding DJ Moore. I think when it comes down to it, I'm taking, if I have a long-term approach in like a startup draft, for this draft class, I'm taking Jaxon Smith-Njigba ahead of DJ Moore. But like DJ Moore, he's a wide receiver 2 for me in startup drafts. And I'll say, like, I'll take DJ Moore ahead of Pittman. I'll take DJ Moore ahead of Treylon Burks. I'll take DJ Moore ahead of George Pickens. We've seen it with DJ Moore. I think that, like, people are getting a little too scared of what happened, last year in terms of the pass volume in Chicago. It's when you get a player like DJ Moore, offensive coordinators want to get him the ball. It's been proven year in, year out throughout his career based on his target total. So for, I see a lot of people, projecting DJ Moore to finish as a wide receiver 3 this year, like even a, potential like wide receiver 30, 31, 32, 33. If that's the case, I'm going to have a lot of him in that other format that we don't talk about, Alan. But in terms of Dynasty, like, he lands in Chicago. They don't take a wide receiver until there was like that nightmare scenario where they were linked to Jaxon Smith-Njigba for a little bit, get an Ohio State receiver, in there with Justin Fields. That didn't happen. And not only that, they addressed other positions of need, and they didn't take any receivers until day 3. So DJ Moore is kind of and I think he's in a good spot. That offense needs to take a step forward. Justin Fields needs a wide receiver like this. And I think DJ Moore could have a number of wide receiver 2 seasons on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree 100%. I don't see a reason why, we see 118 targets, 162, 118. I don't see a reason why he can't bump back up to that 140-plus area, especially in this offense where there's not really a true competitor for the number 2. I know Darnell Mooney's there, but, I mean, DJ Moore is unequivocally better than Darnell Mooney. And you look at the ADP where DJ Moore is currently going right now in the ADP tracker, it's like the Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, Michael Pittman, Chris Godwin area, and like I like Godwin, I like Burks, I like these guys, but it's not close. Let me ask you this though,
Cody. So is the problem with DJ Moore in Dynasty is that he every year gets 4 touchdowns? I mean, maybe he had an outlier year somewhere. What's the case for getting him to that double-digit touchdown area?
Cole Kmet had 7 last year after having 0 the year before. And that was kind of the move. It was like, all right, Cole Kmet's going to bounce back from 0. He's going to jump into the top 10. When you look at really, it's just scoring, right? If this team does what we kind of saw Philadelphia do last year, and it's the thing that makes sense, right? Fields is a year behind Hurts. Oh, look, they just added their wide receiver in DJ Moore. They traded for him just like they traded for A.J. Brown. I don't think this team is close to what Philadelphia is, but it seems like they're building it the right way. If they're building it the right way, all ships will rise, and whatever the hell that thing is saying. But if the scoring goes up,
rising tide lifts all ships.
Right, and that whole ship is Chicago, and I think they had a great draft, and I think continuing to do it from the inside out, which is how Philly's done it. I'm not saying they're going to do what Philly did, but what I'm saying is if they can add 6, 7, 8, 9 points per game over the course of the next year or two, I think a big portion of that's going to come from DJ Moore being the alpha in this offense. Again, he's had 1,500-plus air yards, but 4 straight years. He had over 1,000 the last 4 years. Like, he is an alpha. He is the archetype. He is the Jamar Chase. He is the A.J. Brown type of player. And I think he's at 26 years old. He's only coming into that own right now. And I think that if the connection's there with Fields day one, shit. I mean,
and Alan,
what's the upside? What's the ceiling? What can he do? Can he 150 targets for DJ Moore? He's electric. Dude. Like, tell me he can't be a top 5 wide receiver in a given season.
And I'll give you guys there was a stat that I actually had written about earlier this offseason, but in 2018, the last time we saw DJ Moore play alongside a very mobile quarterback in Cam Newton, he had 172 rushing yards on only 13 attempts. And last year, Chicago had 20 rushing attempts by their wide receivers. So that was part of their attack last year. So I think that's one thing that's kind of been missing from DJ Moore's game, where they're going to get him some manufactured touches as a rusher this year. And if he gets 10 to 13 of those, then that is another thing to keep an eye on.
All right, guys, we're going to continue talking about veteran wide receivers, and people are hot for Garrett Wilson on the New York Jets for good reason, right? Going on the 1-2 turn at this point. It wouldn't surprise me if he overtakes CeeDee Lamb in that format that we don't talk about, seasonal, right? But I'm wondering, Cody, is Garrett Wilson, are the expectations too out of control? The Jets this week signed Randall Cobb. I know that's like grandfather stuff, but that's probably another, 30 targets, 35 targets out the door. It needs to be cut off for him. Corey Davis is still there. Yeah, I mean, we know we have Allen Lazard, who's an excellent blocker in your points per blocking league, but Allen Lazard is going to be a blankie for Aaron Rodgers. He's a comfort piece for him. And then you have the running game. Rodgers traditionally had that low passing volume. So is Garrett Wilson set up to disappoint? Now, let me phrase this, relative to where he's being drafted in Dynasty right now, or don't even worry about it. Bet on talent.
I would say to bet on talent, but I think you have to be open-minded to saying, okay, he's not Devontae Adams, and this chemistry is going to take time like it always does and always has with Rodgers, where obviously Lazard and Cobb is there. There's a running game there. There's a bunch of tight ends there. He loves to go to tight ends. Corey Davis is also a veteran, and as long as he's on the roster, that matters. I know Corey Davis is like almost looked at as if he's like on the street right now, but he's in the building currently. I love Garrett Wilson, but you either have to be on one of two sides, I feel like right now. You have to be on team Garrett Wilson is where he's valued or better than that and should be considered in the potential Devontae Adams type of an output season. Or you need to be like, all right, this is just 2 years. It's going to take time. And there's too much there. I don't know. It's a tough conversation. 7 to 9 targets per game.
That's not going to do it, right, Theo? That 7 to 9 targets is not going to do it.
Yeah, that feels low though.
I mean, but guys, we're talking about a guy who was I think this is a situation where you don't want to overthink it, Alan. The guy was a top 10 draft pick. He was an early entry. He was an extremely successful player at Ohio State. Yeah. And guys, we're talking about like he gets a huge quarterback upgrade. So at the end of the day, Alan, it comes down to like it's the style of drafters where he gets pushed up because of his age and his immediate productivity and his profile. That's not necessarily a bad approach though, because you're having him leapfrog some older players. Guys that did what he did as a rookie with his sort of draft capital are not the kind of guys you want to fade. Like he's a ridiculous talent. I think that people might get a little bit in trouble in 2023, but I think like betting on Garrett Wilson to have a number of wide receiver 1 seasons over the next 5 years, I think is something that I'd be willing to do. And I think it's sometimes in Dynasty that, hey, I could sell this guy for a lot, and that's awesome. Like, let's take a haul for Garrett Wilson. But at the end of the day, you might be giving up an asset that you're not able to equal, and you're not able to reach that level. So he's a difficult one. I think that he's a difficult one to kind of manage. I think if I'm sitting on Garrett Wilson shares, like my Garrett Wilson teams, I'm not looking to trade them. And I had some very big offers, for Wilson, and I'm just not looking to unload that. I think if I can get a pivot, the kind of pivot that you should think about with Garrett Wilson,
Justin Jefferson,
adding a pick. If you can trade up to a truly elite Chase or Jefferson, you do it. Or if you can take a guy like Olave, who we like a lot, and you get Olave plus something significant, then you think about it. But I think Wilson's he's just a clean profile.
Let me ask Cody this, and I'll give you the. We're not pivoting off Garrett Wilson just yet, but Theo mentioned Olave and Garrett Wilson. Those are similar tiers. If you have anything to add about Wilson, that's fine. But I'm curious. Christian Watson is not getting the same treatment as those guys, yet he was the wide receiver 9 from the time he was a full-time player last year. When he was inserted into that lineup, week 10 to the end of the season, a top 10 wide receiver, yet he's getting treated as a full tier below. So is the market just too low on Christian Watson, or is there a little bit more risk there, and that's why he's 2-3 rounds later in Dynasty?
I think there's too many people that still don't believe in what we saw at the latter part of last season because it's too comparable to Randy Moss, and everyone's like, he's not Randy Moss. And then that just says, well, that was a lot of Rodgers. It's Jordan Love. It's going to be a natural dip. It's not going to be the same thing. It's going to be entirely. And they just it's kind of similar to where the Garrett Wilson thing, where everyone's like, yeah, can he reach Devonta Adams? Where on this side with Christian Watson, it's like, yeah, but he doesn't have the quarterback, and that was just like hyper outlier efficiency that we're never going to see again. But it's like, yeah, but what if? Right? What if? And that's the same world we're playing in, I think, and my last comment on Garrett Wilson was the same thing. It's like Theo brought up one thing, and I brought this up at the start of the show. When I play Dynasty, I think about seasonal. When I play seasonal, I think about Dynasty. If you're drafting a startup right now and you got Garrett Wilson on the board, Theo said one thing. He said, in 2023, you might be worried. Yeah, well, in 2020, it's 2023, and I'm kind of worried. And that's where the single thought of doubt comes in. You go, yeah, but do I want to spend wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5 cost in a startup on Garrett Wilson, knowing that 2023 could be a struggle? The thought, though, is, are you going to make that bet? Are you betting on him paying off at that price? Do you think he can overplay where you're paying, or do you think there's a chance he falls back? Because if he falls back, obviously you can go and trade for him. But for the Christian Watson thing, I do think it's pretty straightforward, just being that it's a lot of I guess you'd say media driven, but it's really just social media driven, where people are like, yeah, he's an outlier, he's not Randy Moss, et cetera, et cetera.
Right now in the chat, I want people to put their order of those 3 wide receivers for Dynasty Fantasy Football. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Christian Watson. I think I know what the outcome is going to be, but I want to see how you're valuing those guys. Forget ADP. Which one of those guys you want on your team? Rank them 1, 2, and 3. Theo.
Garrett Wilson 1, Chris Olave 2, Christian Watson 3.
ADP.
And I'd like to have as much of all 3 as possible. Like Christian Watson, Alan, it's interesting because there's a counter argument that the sample size was not large enough to kind of sustain this sort of thing. But I do believe that Christian Watson is a exceptional athletic talent. I think he could click well with Jordan Love, and his main target competition is a rookie in Jayden Reed, a guy we like, but it's not like they added, some, veteran who's had a number of 125 plus target seasons. We're projecting Jayden Reed to be able to step in on day one. It's not like we know he's going to be able to step in on day one. So for me, Christian Watson is in a great spot. We have him at wide receiver 18 in Dynasty overall. I think that's about right. I think you could make a case for him a little bit higher, but you could also make a case for him a couple of spots lower. So I think treating him as a wide receiver 2, a locked-in wide receiver 2, is the correct one. His draft capital is not nearly what Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson was. So you're talking about a round 2 guy versus a top 15 overall guy. So that does matter a little bit. But Watson's in a great spot, and we like him a lot at Player Profile. I'm
going to give you guys a Dynasty question to bring out the show. 1 answer on the count of 3, okay? 1 answer on the count of 3, and that's how we're going to end the show today. This is a truly Dynasty-centric question. You got Christian Watson, and you got Cooper Kupp. You're on the clock. You can only take 1 in Dynasty. The correct answer is 3, 2, 1.
Christian Watson.
Christian Watson.
And that's the show.
Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out playerprofiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.